Welcome back to another episode of Women in Leadership. I am your host, Nikki Csek, and in studio with me, I have Lisa Locke.
Hello.
Thank
Hello,
you,
everyone.
Thank you so much for joining, Lisa.
Welcome.
So we'll start today. Today, you are the CEO of Stober Group.
Yes.
Can you tell us briefly what Stober Group is?
Sure. Well, Stober Group, it's a very long-standing company in Kelowna. It's been around. There's debate about when it was officially a full running company.
Okay.
But I think in a biography that Al Stober wrote, I think it officially became a company in 1957.
Okay.
And I think he came to Kelowna from, I think it was the prairies, and had a vision for the city at a time when the kind of vision he had would have been quite a long stretch to pull together. And part of it had the idea of centralizing commercial real estate in the middle of the city, away from the city core. And he took advantage of an opportunity under, at the time, I think, a land use contract that allowed him to not really have to go through the many layers of entitlement that you would typically go through for new development, and had a feeling if he built it, they would come. And started with Landmark 1, and I don't know what year that was. I think it may have been in the 80s or the early 90s. And I think that was following quite a bit of development in residential building of apartment buildings. So a buy and hold organization with really a philosophy to purchase land, buy either or build either residential or commercial properties and hold them for the long term. So then all over these many years, it's now grown into a pretty decent sized portfolio, a very large foundation, and probably 85% of the commercial real estate in the region.
So Lisa, if I asked you in school, when you, in career day, when you got to present what you wanted to be, was it the CEO of an extremely large real estate portfolio company?
I didn't know. I think, well, for me, I don't know that you know what you're even good at in school. And if you would have asked me at the time, I had in my mind that I really wanted to be in business. And I think up until probably grade 11, I was very focused on finance and numbers.
Interesting.
Yeah. And so I started to focus in on those type of courses. You know, you can take electives and stuff in grade 11 and 12. But when I graduated from high school, I didn't know really where I wanted to be, but I knew I wanted to just get working. And I graduated in 1986 from high school, and it wasn't necessarily this, you got to go off to university unless you're going to be a doctor or a lawyer or something very prescribed. I just wanted to work. I just wanted to get into a job and start earning money. And I left home really early. I left at like 18, so I really needed a job, and there wasn't anyone paying for me to go to university, so I had to kind of figure out what my path looked like. And then through a series of just working in an office, seeing what everybody did. My first job, I was a receptionist, and watching what everybody did. At first I thought, well, maybe I want to be in marketing. Maybe I should head that direction. And, you know, I was young. I was like 18, so I was doing data entry, and I liked numbers. And as I moved through different jobs and watched what everybody else was doing, I met somebody in a job that I worked at called, it's not around anymore. So Olufsen, they're a bakery wholesaler back in the day, Francis Foods. And the controller of that company, her name was Carol. I don't remember her last name now. It's a long time ago. Anyway, she was a CGA. She inspired me in so many ways that I thought, I want to be in finance. I think this is where I want to go. So I enrolled in the CGA, Certified General Accountants Association, back in the day, and started doing the coursework towards that. And as I was working through that and diving into that, and ended up, I think I was 26 years old, and I was working for a company called PHH Environmental, which is now called Pension. I kind of had got to the top of that role. I think it was controller or VP of finance. And I was starting to get a little bit bored with numbers. And there was a whole other sort of side of me that was emerging at that time that was, I'll call it like a right brain counterbalance to like the left brain numbers side. And I started to realize I had this huge creative side that was going to die if I didn't feed it with something. And while I was working at that company, I met a friend. Her name was also Lisa. She was an environmental engineer. And the two of us just created this incredible friendship of, there's a big world out there. What do we really want to do with our lives? And I think we were both a little bored with what we were doing at the time and started to dream about something else, something different. And I don't know if anyone's ever heard of a grand tour in Europe back in the early 1800s or 1900s. People used to go on these grand tours to find themselves. So at this point, I was well established in my career. I had gone through a lot of schooling, and I thought I needed a creative, inspirational perspective that would open me up in ways I just wasn't accessing living in Vancouver, and I hadn't really traveled much in my life at that time. So off we went to Europe. She had just gotten married literally the week before, and I was going through a course in Emily Carr.
Okay.
And I was doing some kind of art course, and I had to do this portfolio, and I had no idea what I was doing. But in order to go, I wanted to go with a tour group that was going to go and do art in like Italy or something.
Okay.
So I had to submit a portfolio, art portfolio, to this course I was taking at Emily Carr to get accepted to go with this tour group. So and Lisa was getting married, so she couldn't come with me. So I said, okay, I'm going to do this. And I put this whole portfolio together and I submitted it. And they came back and they said, okay, yep, you've been accepted to go on this tour with us. And I thought, okay, I'm just going to call Lisa and let her know I've got this, because she really wanted to go but couldn't go. And I said, I got accepted, I'm going. And she said, don't go. I want to go. Let's us go. We will go together and we'll do this grand tour. And so I had to make this decision. Am I going to go with Lisa or am I going to go with this art program? I decided to go with Lisa. And we were gone for about 4 or 5 weeks. We did England, we did Scotland, France, Italy, Switzerland. And at the end of it, it just blasted me open to another way of thinking about everything. A trip like that it was just really meaningful. And then we came back and we started a company together, the two of us. So we went on contract with PHH, who were both working there, and created a little company called Stober Group. And I had a passion for old houses and heritage buildings, and she did environmental phase ones. And somehow together we cobbled together this business plan and started helping developers who were buying historical properties, that were redeveloping historical properties. And I was doing the financial feasibility portion of it, and she was doing all the environmental work. And then we were also helping to come up with visions to work with old buildings. So I'm skipping a lot of the way through. But in doing that, I started meeting other developers, and the primary focus of what I was working on for these developers was financial feasibility work. So that went on for a few years, and one day there was a large group I was working with that were trying to get a project off the ground, and I was helping to sort of shop it for them. They were looking for a partner. And so I went in and presented the financial feasibility to the VP of Development at Concert Properties, Maurice Pez, at the time. And I don't remember if Lisa was with me or not, or if I did that on my own. But I presented everything to him, met with him for a while, and said thank you and left the meeting. And then about a week later, I got a call from him, and I thought it would have been relating to this financial feasibility thing I'd put together. And he said, I've been looking for a development manager for, about 6 months, and no one's sticking out. And I think I've interviewed, I feel like he said 100 people, and no one was sticking, but you stuck. And would you be interested in taking a position with Concert? And Lisa had just gotten pregnant with her first son and was heading into sort of a maternity thing. And so I thought, I'm enjoying working on my own and having this consulting company and working with developers. but this might be something different. So at that point, I was enrolled in urban land economics at UBC, and I was already sort of making a commitment to move into real estate development more formally. As I was sort of doing these financial feasibilities, I realized I really enjoyed the visionary part of looking at a piece of land and envisioning what it could be, and then figuring out what the feasibility was, and then working through the entitlements and dealing with all the community members. And I had enough of that now in the consulting arrangement that I felt like I was ready to sort of take on a role as a development manager. So I accepted the job, and that was in 2001. And then, I worked at Concert Properties for about 15 years, and I was development manager, then moved up to director of development, and then vice president of development. And then by the time I left in 2016, I had quite a bit of experience working on very large scale projects, master plan communities, many, many towers. That was during when the market was really rising. It was also when the concept of bringing living to an urban environment. So downtown Vancouver at that time was mostly commercial. It's also when Larry Beasley was the city planner in Vancouver. A lot of people know Larry for being quite visionary to say, let's bring people downtown. Vancouver hadn't sort of done that yet. Other parts of the world obviously were doing that. So it was through his sort of OCP envisioning and leadership that the developers followed suit. And I was right sort of in that time where that rising market was just, you couldn't even keep up with how fast we were working through projects. And then I had an opportunity to work in, I think, every municipality in the Lower Mainland, including Vancouver Island. So I had a lot of exposure, master plan community, small scale, big scale, just an absolutely A+ organization, amazing experience, amazing relationships developed through that process.
So I hear so much in here. I hear the mentorship that came from the bakery.
Yeah.
I hear the accountability in the girlfriend or the friendship that had you step outside, extremely step outside of comfort zone to really explore the world if I can and become very inspired, and that's that creativity side. I'm fascinated at I'm going to call it the hand picking at concert. So you were singled out. You didn't apply, and I'm often fascinated in talking to people that when you present, when you show up, when you come somewhere, things happen. The universe has a way of
meeting you there.
It does.
Absolutely.
So you, Lisa, did you get your CGA? Did you get your financial?
I had segued. I took it. I think I was maybe fourth year. It was a 5-year program, and then I segued very late in the program. So from there, then I segued over into the urban land economics program at UBC.
True or false? The 4-year of the 5-year in the accounting lane, is that what gave you the know-how or the ability to do these feasibility studies? Is that where the core of that came from?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and then working as a controller, I think it was probably 5 years. I worked at BHH Environmental in that role. And even just working in that role, it was a fairly large organization. They also had offices in Toronto. Don Pinch and John Holland I worked with. And they needed their entire system sort of reorganized. I had experience prior to that at a company called Clone Leonoff that became Clone Crippen, which then became Crippen. I don't know what they are now. But I learned so much about operations and work in progress and working on project-driven accounting. That was sort of my segue in. In the middle of it all, while I was going through the CGA program, I think I actually did do the 5th-year programs. I got so sort of bogged down going, I've just been in school for so long. I've been in purgatory. I've been so disciplined working through this. And I just need a break. And this was before I'd started at PHH. So this was when I was still kind of working through the CGA program. And I wanted to travel, but of course I had no money from going through school. And so I became a flight attendant for 1 year.
Get out.
So in the middle of it all. And when I did that year-long stint as a flight attendant, which I don't recommend for anyone, it kind of also opened me up in a different way. And it wasn't travel meaningfully, like it wasn't like the grand tour travel. It was more of, flying all over the place and working. I'd lose sense of time as well. You'd leave on a Thursday and you'd come back on a Sunday, but my brain was so programmed to go to work and come home at the end of the day that when I would come home on Sunday, I'd feel like it was still Thursday. It just messes up your whole time clock. I don't know how people can do that job. I have a lot of respect for them. But it was that little gap that I came back and knew that there was something more. And even though I was still working in finance, I was sort of pulled back into it. I got a call from somebody. And again, talking about the universe and kind of calling, I didn't know what I was going to do at that point. I wasn't sure that I wanted to go back to that.
How old are you now?
I was about 24 at that point.
Okay.
And I got a call from a recruiter who had talked to someone who I'd worked with at Kelowna, Crippen, who they are now, who said, I was told by Judy Matilda, who was I don't know what, she was in finance, I think she was the controller, or maybe she's the CFO. I got a call from her saying, we were looking for a project accountant for a company called ResCan, and she highly recommended you when you worked with her at Kelowna. So I'm calling you to see if you're open for this job with ResCan. And I thought, wow, that's interesting, because I always thought that she didn't like me. Like working.
Oh my gosh, Lisa, I find that so fascinating.
Yeah. And it's, I think she said to him, she's the brightest or smartest or some really out there comment that I thought, wow, I thought you hated me. I can't believe you made that recommendation. So anyways, I segued back into finance, worked there. And then it was through that position that I got another call from that same recruiter for the job for PHH. So I felt like I was sort of being kind of pulled along in these positions until I got to sort of that pinnacle point where I had a staff of like 5 and, for the size of that company. And I was also sort of running the operations of that company. But I thought, this is great. This has given me so much in terms of understanding how, the logistics of operations and how companies work and staff. And I was doing HR and all these other things was kind of rolled into that role. But the creative side of me was screaming out, right? The sort of the artist in me definitely needed more. And at that point, I'd met Lisa and we'd started to kind of toss around ideas about what was missing from our lives, and then did the trip and then decided, and then I enrolled in urban land economics. So I never went sort of back to the CGA to finish those last 2 courses, and I just segued right over into
regret?
No. I think it would have killed me. I was ready to just move on. And urban land has a huge financial component as well. And that was another 4.5 years at UBC, and I did graduate from that. So in the end, it's all there. It's just, it kind of allowed me to specialize more on the real estate development side.
So in the time at Concert and PHH or ARC, is there, what is the makeup of these organizations? Are these small, medium, large businesses? I
think Pynchon's quite large now, but they were, there was the Toronto and then there was the Vancouver. They were owned by the same partners, but they kind of ran separately. So I would sometimes be going and meeting with other parts of the Pynchon kind of empire at the time. But now I believe they're all collated. So for us, maybe there was 85, 90 people, and it was in Richmond.
That's perfect.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm trying to get a sense of. So as you're coming in and doing your job, and there's a big part of what you're doing is from experience of what you've done in the past, but you're still taking on a lot that is new. There's an enormous amount of learning.
Yeah, every job. Yeah.
So I'm curious if without being humble, if we're in a firm that has 85 people, why do you think you got the opportunity for advancements, or you were singled out or recommended? Is it what?
I don't know. Okay, so I would say my personality, I'm very passionate, which is not necessarily always the case. And I think when you show up every day with passion and excitement and just looking forward as to where could this be, right? How could we make this better? How could we improve? How could we evolve? How could we grow? It's just that constant forward thinking motion and bringing that passion back to the team, getting everybody else excited about that vision, or that getting everybody else sort of ignited, and creating a team that's really, really connected and working and rowing in the same direction. I got a lot of pleasure out of that. I also loved helping and mentoring others. A big part of, really that's what gives back to you at the end of the day. And now I can sort of look back in all of my relationships over the years and every place I've ever worked. There's a long thread and a trail of people that I've watched go on to be very successful in their own places, in their own right. There is so much gratitude back for that you get when you have an ability to kind of do that for other people. I think, honestly, that's probably the most gratifying thing.
But what a beautiful legacy. As you,
it's so wonderful.
As you do that rearview mirror check and you see how you inspired or motivated or transcended, even course corrected maybe a direction that someone was going in because maybe you believed in them, or maybe you ignited or inspired them.
Yes, and I think that is actually the foundation of it all, really.
So would that be, there was an article, and I didn't go get it, Alexa sent it over to me, that references soul, putting soul into real estate. Let me see if I can quickly find a line. The visionary leader is now focused on building projects rooted. So this is speaking in the work that you're doing at Stober, building projects rooted in authenticity, shifting from a global to a local market, and emphasizing how to create a community in development through placemaking interactions, or as Lisa says, finding the soul. This philosophy is one that is infused in the ethos of Stober Group. So is that...
That's like everything. So I think, I don't know. I think women in general, and I think that article speaks a lot to the sort of intuitiveness that we often carry. And not to say men aren't intuitive. I'm sure we all have our intuitiveness. But because of the trajectory of real estate development itself is also, can be quite male dominated if you're in development.
Absolutely.
And you can get on board with that sort of, not agenda, but you can get on board with that mentality and that thinking, and you can be very successful. And I've worked with the incredible people in my career. But where you have an opportunity to truly embed your heart and your soul into projects, no matter what it is you're doing, whether you're building a small building or an entire master plan community, it's that creation of the DNA of a project, that vision, that idea, that soul that goes into it, that other people then tap into, feel, and become attracted to. And I feel that that's something that's divinely inspired. We each have our own unique footprint or fingerprint that we can put on things. But if you don't allow that to be infused into a project, if it's just business to you, if it's just, here's a piece of land, we don't have the land residual value, but if you just do the numbers exercise and then you hire a group to say, oh, this is how we're going to position it, here's the story, here's the name, here's the whatever, that's all great. And lots of projects can do quite well like that, especially in a rising market when people don't really, they're investing or whatever, as long as the story's good and you've got a good builder and you're doing a good job. Why wouldn't I buy this property? But when you have a chance to infuse it with something that has heart and soul, people feel it. And when they come and they see it and they look at it, it resonates and it sings and it says something else besides just, oh, this is just a building or a community that.
And it is that law of attraction.
I think so.
Pulls you in or pushes you out.
Yeah, and it's when it becomes a labor of love, no matter what you do, and I think that's what I'm talking about with a passion piece. Like if you really bring that into everything you do, something beautiful emerges. And you might not know what's going to emerge, but when you start there, it's the best possible outcome in my mind.
Is there, where you are today, as you reflect back on the roads traveled, are there any pieces that are missing that you have to come back in and have an opportunity to backfill? Is there anything you wish you would have gone left instead of right? Is there anything that you'd like to course correct or
No, I mean,
or redo?
I'm not sure about redo, but I would say that to be your authentic self, even if you're in a room full of people that have 20 years experience on you and you're thinking, what do I know? Or how can I add to this conversation? Or where can I add value? Or you dim your own light to not overshadow something that's mediocre, even though you know it could be better. Don't.
Yes.
Don't do that. Bring your authentic self to every conversation, and don't be afraid to come with fresh and new ideas that might be outside the box. And also don't be afraid to put your heart into things, and maintain that open heart through. I know a lot of times I just kept quiet, right? In those earlier days where it was sort of like, I don't know if I agree with this, or I'm not sure if this is right, and there could be something better here. And I'd love to be able to speak up. But in those early days, it's sort of like, I'll just stick to what I know and not take that risk, right? So finding your voice and believing in yourself and bringing your authentic self to everything you do. Gosh, if I could tell that to young people and just start there.
And I think that's so critically important. I don't think it's a matter of being the authority or taking all the oxygen out of the room.
No.
I think it's being part of and not being scared or ashamed of maybe being perceived as not smart or silly, or just having the ability to not participate.
Yeah, well, it's finding the courage, right?
It is.
To use your voice and to put things out there that might be rejected.
May I ask a personal question?
Yeah.
Married?
Yes.
Children?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. Is there anything in that, as that weaves in and layers in? Because I'm often referencing decades as we go through our decades. There's some decades that I actually don't know how I ran as fast as I ran and did what I did. So was there any time that marriage or children and career were fighting?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's why I live in Kelowna. So we had fertility struggles, had to go through IVF. I became a mom. My first son, he was 14 now, was born, I was 40. And my twins were born when I was 43 years old. So then at the time I was working through a very large project called Harborside. It's now called North Harbour in North Vancouver. And that project was a business park that was owned by Concert Properties initially, and had the idea about bringing residential to it. Mm-hmm. It was in an industrial land bank. And so the director of planning, Richard White, was actually our neighbor. And so, I was pitching this vision of why don't we make this something more, and worked with David Podmore, who came with me to the city and a visioning document to say, like, this is what it could be, and really had a lot of buy-in. Daryl Musada was the mayor at the time, and he was very, very supportive of the idea. So I had to take it through OCP change and rezoning, and it was highly, highly, highly contentious. Won't get into all that now. But from the beginning of that until the rezoning was complete and we were starting to work on development permits, I had 3 children. So it was a long project. But having twins was an absolute game changer for my husband and I. And it's an all hands on deck thing when you have twins. And working on such a big project, and it's a contentious project, and a lot of energy expended in the creative, masterminding through all of that, and the technical complications and all the community outpouring that we had to deal with. I was exhausted. And so I used to drive home every day. Something at 4:00 every day would kick in that I need to get to my children. And the force that happens when you're in the kids were either with a nanny or with daycare, the force that would kick in at that time, it's like a mountain moving moment. Like, I need to leave. I have to go get to my children. It's like I could work and know that they're fine with caregivers, but at that point it's like ding, ding, ding. So off I would go, driving through traffic in Vancouver, going like, oh, I cannot keep living this life, right? And we were living in West Vancouver in Caulfield at the time, so it's like a bridge. Sometimes there were so many people jumping off bridges at that time, so sometimes you get stuck, literally suiciding on bridges.
Gosh. Okay.
And then you get stuck, or just a horrible accident or whatever. So you get stuck on a bridge forever. There's another bridge you got to go, second narrows, turn around, try to get through. Anyways, you lose your life in traffic like that. So twins, and then our older child, my husband was working at Deloitte. I was working downtown. We'd both be on the wrong side of the aisle. We were being in the North Shore. You just, being separated by a body of water from your kids. None of this is rational. But as a mother, it was just like, I just can't do this anymore. And so we started talking about, like, maybe we move, or what do we do? And I just knew something was coming up. And so I started quietly renovating our house. Like, I redid the kitchen when my twins were like a year old or something.
Renovations.
Oh God. It was, my husband's like, why are you doing this? I'm like, I don't know. I just have to do this. And yeah, I don't know how I did that. So we did that. And then I had lunch with a friend who lives here, a very dear friend, Laura Gossett. She and I worked together at concert, and then she'd left years before, but she lived here. And then Morris Pez, the guy that hired me, that VP of development at concert who hired me, he long left concert. But he also lived in West Vancouver and was moving to Kelowna. And so at lunch, Laura and I were just talking about Kelowna, da-da-da-da-da. And it was 2016. The market was kind of rising to a peak. We were going to put a pool in our backyard, and we had just gone through an appraisal with the bank to get a loan. And I had lunch with Laura, and we're talking about Morris moving to Kelowna and her life in Kelowna. And ding, all of a sudden in my head, I thought, oh my gosh, we're moving to Kelowna. So I texted my husband and I said, we're moving to Kelowna. And he texted me back and he said, could you call me? And so I called him on the way back to the office. I don't know, babe, I think we need to move there. I just have this feeling this is where it's like everything just blew up in me when I allowed that thought to come in. Yeah. I got back to the office. I had a message from the bank saying, do you know what your house is worth? Because what we had paid for it versus what it was worth was shocking. And so it was like, wow, this is a good time to cash out.
The aligning of
everything sort of lined up. And then as soon as we made that decision, sort of like a red carpet rolled out and just got us here very easily. So then we moved here in 2016. And even when I joined Mission Group.
It's a different pace.
Yeah. And well, it got busy still here. But when I joined Mission Group, I said, I am thrilled to join your group. I don't want to be in a management position. I don't want to be, I want to work 10 to 3. And I don't want to be a VP of anything. And I just need to take a breather. They were like, okay, no problem. You can do that. So I did that for a while, maybe a year. And then Luke Turi was promoted. And then they pushed me, asked me if I wanted to take the role of VP of development. Of course, I said yes. And then we were off and running again, but in a much calmer, more lifestyle-oriented, very much more balanced life. The kids were also a little bit older by this time. And so really I kind of paced myself until I was really ready to kind of re-engage fully in my career, really. So in that way I had a bit of I'll call it a break, but not like maybe a year. And then, of course, there was lots that we were working on.
Enormous amounts that Mission Group did in such a short runway in this community. Yeah,
absolutely. So I sort of joined when they were still doing wood frame, and they needed a bit of support on just getting the high-rise stuff going. And that's, of course, all I did in Vancouver. So it was a great segue and opportunity for me. And I love all those guys. So, still have a great relationship with everybody there.
Older son, and twins, girls?
All boys.
You have all boys. Okay. Is there a piece of advice or wisdom that you can share, would like to share to girls or women that are considering the sector or the industry? Is it, if you had a daughter, would you nudge her into it?
Into the industry? Yeah. I mean, I am maybe a different parent. I don't actually care what my kids do. What I care is that they're happy and that they pursue their passions. And I think that would go for any gender, girl or boy. And I don't think it matters as long as you're following your heart and your passion and what excites you in the morning and what you can't wait to get going on. And it doesn't matter to me what that is. It really doesn't. Because I know no matter what, if you don't follow your passions, you will not be the best version of yourself in life.
It's so true. And we see it time and time again. And I think I think that's amazing that you had that allowance, that you gave yourself grace to pursue the creative side, to answer the calling, and be very in tune to messages appearing to you and acting on them.
Yeah. I felt like I had a lot of support.
Lisa, thank you so much for coming in and sharing with us your journey. And I certainly hope if anyone has any questions or anything, that they're welcome to reach out to you.
Yeah, absolutely. For sure.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.